good.
anyway, well, Colin D. Smith, thank you so much for joining
Thank you.
and graciously making the time. I know we have been on each other's radar for a couple of years,
Yes,
but actually never met in person. So this is, still quite a virtual alien experience.
agreed,
Yeah.
agreed.
So, well, first of all, I admire your book shelves in the back there. And just to give the audience a little bit of an insight into what you do, um, Colin is joining us from London, and he is a specialist in active listening. So he's actually one of the foremost listeners um, in his profession in the UK, not only for companies where he, goes in to also advise leadership, but also in a private remit. And from what I gathered, and please correct me if I reiterate this wrong, the mission is really to transform people's lives by teaching them to become better active listeners. And
Yeah.
obviously, that has a ripple effect then throughout every single relationship and every encounter you or we make. So yeah, and Colin is also the author of a wonderful book. Please check the links out in the description, and you can find his website and more details on his incredible work there. So
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you.
yeah.
The only thing I would change on that is
Yeah.
that I was co-authored it with 7 others.
Oh, co-author,
So
yes.
so we all contributed either a chapter or two,
Yeah.
and I felt blessed to be able to contribute one chapter on active listening.
Okay.
But yeah, it's quite an interesting journey, shall we
Yeah,
say,
well,
to do
co-authoring
that.
always is, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it myself, having collaborated with many other writers. It's a wonderful learning journey, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And certainly, if you want to write your own, having had that experience is really helpful. Um, and it's straightforward, but it's not easy. There's a lot of work involved. A lot of work involved.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There's
and
a wonderful saying, making complexity simple, no?
yeah, very much
Yeah.
so. Very much so.
So,
And
yeah.
I think the only other one was when you talked. The point you make about listening is that if we could just shift that dial just 1% more, 2% more, 3% more, for people across the world to listen just a little better, it would be transformational.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if you like, that's my sort of bigger goal, so that anything I do fits into that. And it doesn't matter if I'm just changing one person, it has a ripple effect. I work with them, they learn a bit more about listening, they listen better to other people, and people say, what's changed? Thomas, Jerry, Lynn, whatever, said, oh yeah, I've learned how to listen a bit better. Oh, how do you, oh, surely we all listen. No, we don't. Oh, it's that sort of thing.
It is, isn't it? Recently, I saw a post, I think it was on Instagram, and that said communication, obviously listening and talking, and it was formed quite harshly, but in a way it's true, is useless if there is no comprehension attached to it.
Beautiful, yes.
Which I think, that really hit at a very different level.
Yeah.
Because, when you have a lot of monologue going on and you're full of ideas, and in this pandemic, not being able to have face-to-face conversations that easily. I think a lot of people maybe even feel, apart from being unheard or unseen by default now in this pandemic,
Yes.
They also, there's a lot of stuff that starts piling up, that you can't get out.
Yeah.
We were discussing this recently. So yeah, as I said, it's one of the obvious, one of the obvious benefits when you start listening. And I know that from my own experience, because Colin has inspired me greatly to become a better listener.
Thank you.
You also start to listen inwards more.
Yeah.
So it's a two-way, it's a kind of, it's a win-win, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that means, and this is also part of the podcast mission here of, this Indigo Warrior podcast, is you start to deep dive.
Yeah.
And for that, you need a very, very different, I think, you can really say, set of tools in order to brave that environment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always like, because I used to be a free diver and a free climber, so I like to make that analogy.
Ah,
It's
beautiful. Yes.
so it's something that
Yes.
I feel very physically almost close to, yeah, from the process. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so the listening part is also, as for me, it started listening to myself more, and also be then able to drown out all that white noise that we constantly have around us these days.
Yes.
So yeah, this is going to be an interesting session. And Colin, if I may, dear listeners, he was so kind to actually test run the Indigo Warrior cards, and I can show you the deck here that we are going to talk about, because I think from what I gather, we're both quite intuitive people.
Mm-hmm.
So this session today, which is really sort of the premiere of what hopefully will be just an hour of inspiration to and resonate with hopefully many out there. The main mission is to provide a platform for men to express themselves, and also to deep dive and empower their own masculinity, their own mindset, and move towards a healthier balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to give that platform from a woman's side, because there is a lot out there, but it's very segregated. You have, and this is not a critique, it's just an observation. There is a lot of groups that are men just for men's mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Women just, in their own segment, but the actual gender fluidity, or if you want, and I mean this in a fluid motion, the coming together on a platform, I think is still not enough. And obviously, if we want to understand each other, we need to learn more from each other, and we need to be exposed to, all the highs and lows of what makes a man, and the masculine problems. We look at all of these horrendous statistics in regards to 3/4 are male suicides in the UK.
Yes.
Under 30. So there is,
Yes.
I think, a desperate need for men to be heard more.
Agreed.
And that also goes for men to be heard by women better. Yeah?
Yes.
And
the other way around.
And the
Women
other way
to be
around.
heard by
Yes,
men.
it always
Yes.
goes both ways.
Yes.
But also to get a platform where they can come, and it's almost creating a safe space, or holding. You mentioned that in your biography. I really like that, holding a safe space.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is where listening comes in greatly, active listening. And so, yeah, on that basis, I developed, the whole Indigo Warrior deck specifically for men, because there's so much out there for women. I actually felt it's high time that men maybe also get an opportunity to experience something that helped us women. We have all these affirmation cards, or the tarot or whatever, something in a more tactile form that you can take with you. You can look at whenever, you can put on your desktop or whatnot, that will consistently ping or make you maybe a bit more aware, and hone in that focus to a more mindful approach of your day-to-day life. Again, hopefully,
Nice.
positive ripple effect. So that's
Yeah.
it in a nutshell. And
That's
I hand over
beautiful.
to Colin now, who's going to do our shuffling. And then I am actually thrown into the deep end here. So I'm going to take a deep dive without knowing where I'm going to be thrown into, because Colin will obviously set the tone with this. And then, yeah, we are off on an adventure.
I love it. Thank you. I'd like to just pick up, before I do the shuffling and pick a card, I'd just like to pick up what you said about free diving and free climbing. is there's a lovely, I can draw a beautiful analogy between that and listening and hearing, is that hearing in your terms is just getting in the water and diving, or just getting, oh, just turn up at the rock face and start climbing, right? But if I would understand both of those activities correctly, you have to be present.
Yes.
You have to be here now to, and I use the metaphor of, or the thinking of, to still and quieten myself so that I can be with the rock face or the water. Because if I'm going to deep dive or climb high and I'm not here now and not present, I could die.
Absolutely, yes.
It's as simple as that. It is black and white like that for me. And so when, before this call, part of what I did was to still and quieten myself so that I can be here with you now. And part of the way I think about it is that I've invited you, not just two-dimensional, but into this 1 meter circle I have around me. So you're here with me now. And that feels very different to the two-dimensional image that I have.
Well, it's a different set point, isn't it? And
yeah,
obviously, sorry, just to add a little bit.
Sure.
When you free climb and when you free dive, you have no tools apart from your own body. No?
Yes.
So it is a very authentic and very intense experience where you need to, as you said, you need to be fully present consistently. No?
Yes.
And that also means there's a beautiful simplicity in it, because all it becomes is breathing and being here. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And it's
that's it. That's listening.
Yeah. And the as I said, it's, I would love to bottle it, you know, and
Yes.
don't give it to me, because it is a beautiful feeling when you actually notice the difference. Like you said, the energy shift of being present here now. I do the same. My whole life is more like a moving meditation, so I don't have to do this deliberately. Yeah.
Yes.
It's either, you know, I step into this other side of reality, but the presence here now is really where all the transformation starts. So, you know, to the listeners out there, if you can literally just take a moment, slow down and breathe a bit deeper, the experience even of this podcast will be a very different one.
I totally agree. So, that's beautiful. Awesome. Thank you.
I'm going to listen now. What do you have?
What I would say, first of all, is the packaging. So when I received my envelope from yourself with the cards in, they arrive in a tin. It's beautifully wrapped. It's all color coordinated. There's beautiful string. There's handwritten. It comes in. It's all recyclable stuff that it's in. So it feels as though there's an awful lot of thought has gone into this, but also a lot of love. And I know I've shared that back with you, but I wanted to make that more publicly known. So this is, and so I feel that there is presence that arrives with the packaging and the cards themselves. So there's a love and a blessing that comes with them. So
energy resonates. So I hope
exactly. Yeah. So so I've got the cards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shuffle them, and then I'm just going to lay them out. And if one jumps out, which it has, that's the one that I'm going to be working with. And what do they say? Some of the people who are on stage, they say that when you get someone stands up in the audience, I do not know this person. So I genuinely have not seen this card. I have no idea what it's going to be. So
it's almost like, you know, Las Vegas, pick a card, one card, you know, don't show it to the audience.
Exactly. So the card I've pulled out is respect. And the words that it says if you do not respect yourself and your own borders, you can never truly respect another life. It is that simple. So if I think about respect, and so the first thoughts are that so there is respect, as it says, respecting self. So that's really important, and I'm going to put it on the little the wood stand there in front of me. So if I've got issues with myself, if I've got a respect issue, as in I really don't like what I stand for, or I don't stand for anything, I'm meandering through life. Not so much take it as it goes and as in flow, but rather I'm just here. That's it. Not really doing much. If I respect, then what it feels like for me is one of being able to tap into the gifts that we each have, our own unique gifts. And I think that's really important, to value and respect whatever unique gift that we have. And I use a metaphor of like a sort of a huge tapestry. And this tapestry isn't uniform. There's lots of different shapes, lots of different colors. And some of the shapes have multiple colors and they're different sizes and things like that. They're all interconnected. And each of us owns our shape. It might be very small, it might be very big, it doesn't matter. But like a jigsaw that has one piece missing, when you look at the jigsaw, you go, you're drawn to the piece that's missing. So the role, the work that we have to do individually is to show up fully with all of our colors, all of our strands, all of our thoughts and feelings. And if we do, then it's not a sign of weakness, as Brené Brown really talks about. It's a sign of strength, that I can share my feelings, I can share my thinking. And the more we are able to operate in a safer place, the easier it becomes to share those thoughts and feelings, that I'm not going to be shown up or ridiculed or bullied for what I'm thinking and feeling. But also is respect for each other, and the respect for the human being that's sitting opposite me, or the human being that's on the train, or human beings that are on the train. And one of the things that can happen to me is if I get judgmental, it catches me out. I'm looking at someone and I make a judgment. It's not about discernment, it's genuine judgment. It's like, okay, so that's a cue for me to bless every single person on the train. So I look at them, I don't shout it out, obviously, but to myself, each person, I bless you, I bless you, I bless you. And it's a reminder that we're all here together. We're all here, I see equally. We're on our own journey. And just because one person's having a great day, another person's having a bad day, doesn't make it right or wrong for either of them. It just is. And it's part of that journey. And sometimes when we think we're getting to the top of the hill, as we get to the top, we realize that not only it's not the top, there's another one to climb, but we've got to go deep into the valley again to let go and to then rise up the other side. So part of the listening, and an element of listening is respect, is equality. And you can't do that without respect for that person or this people. And I'm drawn to a story by a friend of mine called Joe Berry. And the story is that her father, Sir Anthony Berry, was a Conservative MP, and he was killed in the Brighton bombings in 1984. And at that time, Jo was in her late teens, and she vowed that his death would not be in vain. Something would come from it. And so there's a whole story that went with it, but essentially in 2000, she met with the only person ever convicted of that bombing, a guy called Patrick McGee. And she met him in Belfast at a friend of hers' house. And the first hour and a half was Patrick telling her why he did what he did. And he said at that point, he said that Jo just looked at me and she said, along these words, you know, Patrick, if I'd had the life that you've lived, it's entirely possible I would have done what you did. And he said, she disarmed me with her empathy. So here was someone sitting opposite someone who's killed her father, and she's able to give that respect to the human being that he was and to offer him her empathy in that situation. And my thoughts are, and it's very easy to say it, but my thoughts are that if she can do it, we could all do it. Whether we choose to or not is another matter. But I think that respect for each other, we never know what each other's going through. And the point you made right early on about mental health, and particularly with men, is we don't know. So many times we don't know what's going on for them. And just to take the example of Robbie Williams, right? He was someone who would appear to be at the peak of his career. You know, all the issues that a lot of us face, he doesn't have, and yet he took his own life.
Yeah, you would have never known. And
We'd never have known.
It's
Never have known.
strange that you mentioned Robin Williams because I know him personally, living in San Francisco. He came
Right.
into the film shop every week, you know, with his kids, chatted, was really nice to the staff. We had many chats. Yeah. Very weird. He got me a lollipop once because he bought some for the kids and just handed me one over.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it's probably the most prominent example, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you rightly said, so many people are living their life, and yet there is this going on underneath that nobody, and very rarely, you might find a partner might be aware. They hide it so well. Everything's all right.
On the respect note, you know, the card, there is something I read recently which is just a very, well, probably controversial angle, but to show real respect for someone else means you have to, I think they formulated it, you have to suspend your belief of reality, your own belief of reality, and accept that what they say is their truth.
Yes.
You know, without judgment. So this is a very hard place to come to, I think, because we are, you know, all as a society so, and pardon the word, but it is brainwashed by the media to judge every little imperfection.
Yeah.
That it has divided us, even within our own selves, I think. So respect for yourself, this is what it's actually very close to my heart, that card, because I was somebody who had very little respect for myself, but I was also incredibly judgmental, as almost like a facade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Protection.
To catch yourself out, and as you said, notice when you slip into this disrespecting someone based on your own perception. Yeah. Without sometimes any facts, any story, anything, just because. No? Now, there's a difference between respect and gut feeling, I think. Yeah, so I noticed
Very
that
much.
if you come into a room and there's one person where, you know, when you have an immediate distrust of someone, yeah, I mean, you can still be respectful, but I
Agreed.
would say heed your gut instinct over that then. Yeah.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
And when you think back about that time where you didn't respect yourself, what was that like for you?
It was like being caught in a permanent victim role. it's a self-victimization in essence. And I know now, after all this healing journey, where it came from. It disrespecting my own boundaries. And in my case, it was literally having been a people pleaser from early on. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and that has a story
Understand.
attached to it as to why. But it became, it's also a very clever hiding place,
Yeah.
because you never take or you never have to take accountability for setting boundaries, meaning you also hand over responsibility to whoever else is infringing on your space or disrespecting you in whatever form or shape.
Yeah.
And from and when I had to reinforce it, I became quite masculine, meaning I became quite aggressive.
Yeah.
Um, and so there, in order to enforce it, I almost had to step into a place of anger to fuel me. Yeah? Or such complete despair that there was only one way out. So the flip side of that respect and the lack of self-respect made me very angry and a very aggressive person if you tripped me the wrong way,
Yeah.
or if I was triggered the wrong way. And that wasn't necessarily uh, something that I had against the person. It was also very attached to certain events from the past. Yeah? So it's
Yes.
almost an out of time experience. Again, it's an
Yes.
out of now experience that, and it took absolute years to
Yeah.
re. It really is reprogram that in my own behavior,
Yeah.
and to even the first stages of becoming aware. So you have the lack of respect, then you have the awareness, okay, something needs to be done. And the
Mhm.
next step for me was shame. I felt really ashamed that I acted out like this on perfectly innocent people, yeah? Or that I was that judgmental on someone because there was a there was a kind of another piece of knowing somewhere almost outside myself that I knew whatever I perpetuate also has an effect,
Yeah.
even if it's just thinking badly about someone else. And this is why I do that exercise too. If I find myself very judgmental, and these days, thankfully, I'm not in that much contact, civilized space with people. Um,
Yes.
but I notice that, I slide sometimes into this, condemning the whole state of the world, that kind of thing. And some
Yeah.
people run it. I do the same thing. I switch back and I just send them love on their journey.
Yeah.
So it's not my
Nice.
journey. I have no idea what their experience level is that formed them to make them that way.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I also have no right almost to judge. That's a very strange.
It's true. I
Yeah.
like that.
It comes to a point of judging yourself almost, that you're judgmental, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Which is why, we can become ashamed, is the word we used. We use, isn't it? I'm ashamed to say that actually I did judge. Um, but even that word, and I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Brené Brown. I mean,
Mm.
she's very hot on shame,
Shame. Yeah.
right? And her view is, those who've not been blessed by seeing her, is that shame is I am bad. Guilty or guilt, I've done bad, or I've done something bad. Very different, because we can forgive ourselves for what we've done. It's much harder to get past the I am bad.
Mm. Yeah.
And so,
And move through it. But the
yeah,
interesting thing you just pointed out is the connectivity of. So, you pick the respect card. We trailed down to judgment, self and others. then the shame, then the forgiveness. So it's almost we are already mapping a way out of this. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and
very good.
I did find that forgiving, and I mean everybody, no matter if
Mm,
they, fueled an
mm.
apology or, they are even present in my life. My major transformation came, and it was almost an instant effect. One day, I just decided, this is weighing me down too much. This is not benefiting my life. I'm just gonna forgive everyone. And
Beautiful.
that was
Yeah.
yeah, that was a new emotion that I didn't even know was possible. A new feeling. There it was a double-sided thing. It was fear on one side of how can I even contemplate doing this, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
But also there was this attached new freedom of everything, yeah?
Yeah.
That this it was a watershed, if you really see
Yes.
it. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It's a
So
liberating moment.
very very much so, yeah.
And
And it doesn't matter whom or what situation
yep.
or what trauma you've gone through. There was a wonderful, I mean, this is really documentary. I think it was about the genocide in an East African country, and one of the women who was, raped and her family killed, met up with her perpetrator and the
Yes.
forgiven. I
Yes.
mean, if you have a chance to
I've
rewatch this,
seen
I'll see
it.
if I can. So it
Yes.
shows, and as you said, empathy is the most disarming weapon of them all.
Yeah.
If it, yeah, and so to come from that shame into a forgiving space, and it might not,
Yeah.
be all immediate, but slowly move towards forgiving yourself and others, just
Yeah.
because. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I thank you for reminding me of that
And that
film.
that was yeah, that was the real breakthrough point.
Yeah. I think it's lovely that, and what came up as you were saying that was this, is it, is the chicken and egg one. When you start to have that moment of forgiving everyone, is it then that it makes it easier to forgive yourself, or do you forgive yourself first and then do it? I mean, it doesn't matter, um, but there are two things.
Yeah, that's a very good question. For me, it was external first, then myself.
Mm,
I noted because it almost gave me a license, to
yeah,
include myself in this, very vulnerable, imperfect humanity where everybody, is just doing their thing. So it made
yeah,
me more human in my own eyes. Yeah. And that
beautiful.
was okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that, so it, yeah, so the outer forgiveness came first before the inner forgiveness happened. In my
yeah,
case, I don't know if it's the
yeah,
same for everybody.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's accepting us for our perfect imperfection.
Mhm. But
You
coming
know,
back to respect, that reflects obviously then also. I noticed once I forgave everybody, from my past and in the now, I saw people differently. Yeah.
yes,
So I mean, it was as if you tune from a black and white movie into a color one. Yeah.
yeah,
It's still the same person moving in front of you, but all of a
yes,
sudden they have a lot more dimension and a lot more sort of life or
color.
to color to them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was a very interesting, um, yeah, a perceptional shift, and it's still ongoing. I mean, this is something that will probably never end. I don't know. There shouldn't be an end. That the
yeah. Agreed.
deepening of the awareness of someone else, or how you respect yourself and others. There seem to be so many layers. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I still feel I'm not halfway there. Yeah. All
Yes,
good.
yeah. The more, what is it, that phrase, isn't it? The more we know, the more we realize how little we know.
Yeah, well, I said I have the
Same thing.
t-shirt. I have
Yeah.
the t-shirt
Yes,
literally. Yeah,
exactly.
I
It's
know
like,
not, or like
oh,
faulty towers. I know nothing.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And it is that. acknowledgement of it really that makes the difference. And for you to be able to forgive, and from listening to Jo, she's now got to the point where she's got past forgiveness. I don't need to forgive Patrick. There's nothing to forgive.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's
wow, yeah,
that's a different
yeah. But she still acknowledges. She said, I sometimes still get cross, but I know how to deal with that. She goes to a beach and she throws stones into the water. Right? This is her stuff. And forgiveness is for us. Whether you tell the perpetrator or not is another matter. But this is for our. And there was a story, very briefly, of a woman who was separated from her husband, and at the weekend in question, the husband was looking after the daughter. She was 16, 17, 18, that sort of age, and she went to a party, so that was okay. But while she was upstairs, one of the girls in the party came and stabbed her and killed her. And the mother became, very bitter about it, and she, makes no bones about it. But what she became aware of is how cold she had become, and she said, "This is ruining my life." And so she set out to meet the girl, and she had conversations with her, and she forgave her, and she said, "It changed my life." Now, we don't have to meet them. I think the act that you went through of forgiving everyone changes everything. And what I picked up from it was that your energy, your vibration changed, so that when you met with these people, they will have felt it differently. The energy when you arrived with them, oh, this feels different. They may not have been able to articulate why. They can't put a finger on it. Some of them will not be able to put a finger on it. There's something different. I don't know what it is. But you can almost sense that the armoring up that Brené Brown talks about was becoming, with them, was loosened. And therefore, maybe I don't need to defend. I don't need to armor up so much with Iris today. Something's changed. Doesn't make it right that they've, whatever it is they've done.
Yeah.
But the situation changes such that conversation can take place, dialogue can take place, forgiveness, reconciliation, etc., etc. Because if we don't have that, it's always going to be opposites.
It's interesting that you said it doesn't make it right, because the one thing I realized is forgiveness doesn't mean to make it right.
Yeah.
It's a misconception. It's a real myth, and I think if people hold on to forgiveness has to be to make it right, that's a completely false concept. And not only
Agreed.
that, but what you're talking about is you're talking not about forgiveness. If you want to have it right, you're talking about revenge, in a sense, sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's again, we're talking very different energy. If you want to be right, or to have something that was a horrendous event that happened to you, and for the rest of your days you blame life not being unfair, well, we're back to the victimization, aren't we?
Yeah.
So there's a level of choice we have, no matter how bad the event was. And as I said, having lived through this and come out the other side, it's, again, as you said, it still doesn't make it right, but what it did is the forgiveness also gave me more self-respect, that I no longer entertain even remotely negative energies, if you want to call it, or negativity, towards me. So it becomes a healing tool.
Agreed.
For other stuff too, so that the forgiveness is only the beginning, and then you go, as you said, reconciliation. But it all is tied in with respecting yourself enough to not let, unless obviously it's a natural disaster or you're caught up in as you said, a shooting or bombing, but as long as you have control over something, and this is what I, it was the almost the next phase, was to let go of absolutely everything that I cannot control. And
Yeah.
that is another step to freedom.
And another step, totally.
So,
Yeah.
and it's, yeah, it's amplifying the respect you have for yourself and then also actioning that consistently. And
Yeah.
that's where you meet a lot of controversy. Yeah? So you need to learn how to respond rather than react.
Agreed.
So
And that's quite a journey as well.
so yeah,
That shift.
it's layer. I always say it's like onions. You know,
Yeah.
there's
You
layers
know,
and layers and layers you're peeling back.
yeah, because when we started this conversation, there would have been things that I said that were triggered things from your past, because the word was the right word. We know that, and as we learn to notice that we've been triggered, we notice that our reaction to that trigger and how it plays out, and little by little, so we might be triggered, we might react, then we notice that we've reacted. Okay, right. So I've noticed now. Now I can do something about it. And little by little, we start coming back earlier and earlier. So that the moment we get triggered, I've noticed, I've been triggered. Okay, here it is again. Thank you. Right. I don't need to react. So I've stopped reacting. How am I going to respond? And then we do things very differently. And we can use lots of what's the name, distractions for ourselves. So, for example, if I notice I'm triggered, I'm about to react, I might just grab a glass of water.
Yeah, physical distraction is great.
Mm.
Yeah.
A little thing like that, right? Now I'm in a better place. So I'm going to respond to what was said. And I might respond with, that's interesting. Tell me more. I'm sorry you feel that way. How's that? How did you arrive at that conclusion? Or just tell me more about it. Or, that lovely phrase I use, which is, what more would you like to think or feel or want to say? Courtesy of Nancy Klein's Time to Think, and such a beautiful phrase that can open up the other person, but you've also got to listen.
We're back again, aren't we, to the listening? Yeah,
Yeah, it's underneath it all.
Yes, it is. And I only realize now, talking to you again, how much I haven't listened in the last week, to a few people that I spoke to, because my own agenda was overriding, or I wasn't in the right mind frame. But
Yeah.
I call it choice. When you have in a book, you have a plot twist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These moments of awareness that become closer and closer and closer to your now, I call choice twist.
Okay.
Because
yep.
It is literally that moment where, and they say all the power is in the present, which is true, where you have that, even if it's a second, to just stop and reflect and not action anything. And I had to put myself in almost a kind of stasis. Yeah, I like just literally go numb. I mean, I have to laugh now, and the reason why is because it reminded me there is a type of goats that when you shock them, they play dead, or they fall over. Just for a couple of seconds.
Really?
Just for a couple of seconds.
Wow.
And there are other animals in nature that when something triggers you, they literally just go into complete freeze mode. Yeah.
Right.
And then they come out of it again. So nature already has a bit of
yes.
sort of an example how we can utilize this better, and maybe also then create a very different outcome.
Yeah. So you notice that with you were talking about the situation. So you notice that freezing for you and numbing.
Yeah, but it was literally about, I put myself into it deliberately then, rather than this knee-jerk reaction, or when you're triggered and you just want to either lash out,
yes,
armors up, all weapons, go,
yep.
the bazooka over the shoulder.
Yes.
I literally just I put myself into cryo freeze mode literally for a couple of seconds, and that was
Yes.
all it took to reflect. Okay, I have a choice here to
Beautiful.
do this different. I might
Yes.
not even know how different, yeah, but even that got me closer to more peace of mind.
Yeah.
Shifting the energy in the room, or even that dynamic with that person. And especially,
Lovely.
I mean, we're talking obviously here in a on a platform for the masculine, and I call it the divine masculine. Yeah, when you see two guys going up against each other, when they are in their full trigger mode, I mean, that can be incredibly frightening and threatening for other
Yes.
bystanders. So
Yes.
it's not only you in that moment, it's also how you're perceived by sort of the whoever is in that circle of, be that vision or environment.
Yeah.
So the accountability then that you might feel, and I think because you're so in that victim mode that something has been done to you that is unfair or not
Yep.
just, you
Agreed.
completely lose track of how you actually affect anyone else around you.
Yes.
Yeah? And
Perfect point.
when I did this longer, what really changed was that even in the moment where I felt triggered, it was almost like I could scan the room and I knew the outcome if I would react in the way I usually did and play off how this could potentially be really negative
Yes.
for for anyone else without them being part of that dynamic that I'm actually engaging in. Yeah?
Yeah.
So
I like that.
that's another kind of accountability. Yeah.
Yes. So you,
Um,
so in that moment, you notice the impact that if you did the reaction that you normally have done or previously had done, it would not only have impacted the person that you were connecting with, but everyone else around. And so it could have completely changed the whole energy in the room
Yeah, absolutely. It
in
doesn't
that
have to
moment.
be obviously in a very public
Yeah.
environment, but even for a few people, you look at,
Yes.
fights that come in a pub, I witnessed in a pub, yeah. And my
Yeah.
whole evening, my whole weekend was out,
Yes.
completely blown out of the water,
Very
because
good point.
there is this. You have to become aware, and again, this has to do with respect for others. You have to become aware that your story, whatever you are projecting, um, and this is obviously your choice, even if you're angry, will have an effect on completely innocent bystanders if they're in the room. And now the
Yeah.
question is to go back and is this what I want as an outcome?
Yeah.
Or am I completely oblivious? And I, again, we have the ego, the righteousness in that moment that keeps us trapped and whatnot.
Yeah.
And this goes for both genders. I mean, women are just as bad in that,
Yes.
in reacting and this triggering,
Yeah.
just in a different form. But if we, and it's interesting in business, considering we've both worked with leadership. I mean, I have only worked for male bosses, yeah, in my whole 20-year career. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And if you see as a woman, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to discriminate this and say the big boys club, in the boardroom, when they actually go up against each other and you are a woman in a room, I actually felt threatened. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Especially if you can't leave, yeah, in the
I can
space. Yeah?
imagine. I can imagine
So
that.
there is also a consideration that the understanding, and I also know that guys have said that they are really, and it's not the word scared maybe, but more shocked when they see two women really go against each other, or especially if it's in a family environment. So
Yeah.
again, we have
It's
also
not
certain
pleasant.
gender roles and stereotypes that really affect the other, yeah?
Agreed.
um,
Definitely.
in different ways. So yeah, and now I almost would say that I can keep my calm in probably any storm I have faced in the last 10 years. Yeah?
That's nice.
And I mean, and there is a peace of mind Yeah,
Yeah.
it really
And
is.
confidence.
Yeah, there's a peace of mind that you can't buy, you know, but it does take an incredible amount of effort and experiences over and over again to hone that in, you know, that
Yes.
new skill of not reacting but rather responding from a calmer place to
Yes.
absolutely anything.
Yeah. You move it further and further back to the source.
Yeah,
And it's like, that's interesting. I'm not getting triggered anymore
yeah.
because
That's even the best part. Yeah,
it's the
some
best part.
places. Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things that came up was this business of conflict in that, and we touched on safe places. And often they talk about, well, if it was a psychologically safe organization or team or things like this, that the impression might be that it becomes too wishy-washy, too nice and twee, and that we just say nice things to everyone,
Oh God, toxic
right?
positivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas
Mm.
the opportunity to be able to be honest, to be able to share the thoughts and feelings that are coming up for me now, and I think it plays very much to where you're coming from with your work, is how do we get the male part or the masculine energy, because females will also have the masculine energy,
Yeah.
right? To come up and have conversations or conflict that's done in a generative way rather than attack, attack, attack.
Yeah.
So how can we have this conversation in a, excuse me, non-threatening way? Because conflict is the sand, if you like, in the grains of sand in the oyster that create the pearl. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't get the pearl. So if we don't have conflict in its truest form in organizations, it would just flatline, right? That agitation, that passion enables the change to happen. But how do we do it in a way that's safe for people to share and know that they're not going to be bullied, they're not going to be ridiculed or taken out? And sadly, you know, and as a male, I find this really sad that females can be caught up in that situation and are excluded almost because they're female. And that feels wrong because for me, you know, some of the best leaders in this world are female, right? And how can we, for me, at the crux of it is how can the male embrace the feminine in them, not throw away the masculine, but embrace the both, and also the same for the female. But equally, I don't want them to be equals as in the same. Yeah, I don't want you to become this. I don't want you to not become female. Yeah, and I would like to think that you would not want me to not be male. But how do we embrace those? So there are times when actually I want to, you see it in football at times of high emotion, they break down and cry.
And
These
it's
are grown men,
completely
for
okay.
goodness sake.
Yeah.
Sorry?
And it's completely seen as okay
Yes,
in that context, which is
yes,
quite bizarre that it
yes,
is not then taken outside a stadium.
yes.
Yeah.
And why can't they? You know, and if we saw more humility, more uh, concern, more upset in some of our leaders, they would their thinking is probably it's a sign of weakness that I have to show I've shown my feelings, but actually it connects people, it brings people together. You're like us, you have feelings. And I mean, I think we touched on it before. My daughter's a children's nurse, right? She works in A&E, and there are times when she has to go and sit with the parents of the parents who have lost a child,
Yeah.
and at times she's very tearful. You know, if you've just spent the last hour trying to save a child and then you go and sit with the parents, then you're caught up in that. But she's able to empathize. So they know she's feeling it. And she says sometimes, you know, I'm not sure that this is a good thing. And I said, I think it is a good thing that you can share there's an empathy. They feel that you're saddened by this. She's able to step out and above it with compassion, because obviously there are things that need to be done. So she doesn't get dragged down in it. But if you don't do that, then you become cold. And I think, as again, my fan, a fan of Brené Brown, she said, if you stuff any of the feelings down, you stuff all of them. You can't just stuff the bad one. I don't want to have this feeling. It starts to reduce your feeling, I don't know, quotient or whatever the word might be. So the more we're able to share our feelings, show our feelings, whatever it is, it's okay. I think it's healing and it's healthy.
Yes, but in the right space, I always have to say that, because there is,
of course,
there are times, and also people, who don't have the empathy, who can, once you share, make you feel worse because of their, reaction. Yeah. So it's balance in everything, but to know where you can go and share safely, and make more conscious space, even for people to come to you and do that, is a very self-perpetuating healing mode and transformation, I find. And
very much so.
Because as a big empath, I had my troubles with that too. It's a double-sided sword, but I find empathy is another form of listening.
It's listening's in there. Yes.
It's more an energetic form of listening, because the emotions are mirrored, so you feel understood, or at least heard and seen.
Beautiful.
Be that the grief, or
I'm here with you now.
And that doesn't need a lot of words. Is that that's why that's why we are capable of expressing just with our facial muscles, even all the emotions that are inside. And I didn't even know until sort of a couple of years ago. I researched there are 3 completely different forms of tears you cry. They all have they have 3 different chemical compositions. So your brain chemistry, depending on if it's tears of joy, tears of fear, I think, and tears of grief, are a completely different cocktail. Yeah?
Good grief.
So it just shows you how our essence is designed, to deal with whatever emotions we have in very specific ways. So maybe, that already gives somebody hope, in some way it did for me, that this is a natural byproduct almost of our emotional release and healing. Yeah?
Very much so.
So, there's no reason to stifle that, and especially not for men. And when you said the feminine, and the masculine, I've been trying for years to find 2 other words that would describe, what you see as the yin-yang energy. We all have that in us, because the immediate association when you say, oh, you need to get more in touch with your feminine side to a guy, is like, oh, alarms, and I'm not going to become a girl. But because it is so absolutely not what it is, what this depicts. Yeah?
Agreed.
And I'd rather have gone back to now calling it sort of, yin yang. These are 2 very, very polarized energies we all have inside ourselves, that if one of them isn't balanced, everything else falls by the wayside. Yeah?
I like that.
There is no health to be had mentally or physically if those 2, and call it, a healthy masculinity and a healthy femininity.
Oh, yin and yang.
Are combined. And this is why I'm so keen on making this an open platform between me as a woman and men in their gender roles, whatever they might be. This is not about preference. Being in balance with your inner feminine and your inner masculine, or vice versa, has nothing to do with being homosexual or being gender fluid or whatever. Again, there's such a different realm, and this is why as I said, I've been trying to come up with, two different terms that would incorporate what the essence of those two energies actually stand for better, rather than
Agreed.
being ticked off as weak and the other one strong.
Agreed. Yes.
So yeah, if anybody has any ideas, very happy to hear them. Yeah, maybe
Yes.
we can. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's that
um,
those two archetypes. Yeah,
yeah. So
I like
the
it.
if we're looking at respect, coming back to the card, and also respecting maybe your other part in you, that
Hmm.
is, if you are in a female
Yes.
male shape, that you have a feminine energy or essence, and it has to be there, because everything in
Yes.
this universe runs on duality in order to evolve, so
Yeah.
going from the microcosm to, out into the stellar galaxies, everything needs friction to
Yep.
birth something new or to grow and come to a
Agreed.
new understanding. So it's essential that they are there, so why deny yourself your own essence and
Yeah.
suppress one,
One
the other?
half.
Yeah,
One
one
half
half.
of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
Such a good
society
point.
does it already for you, I mean, enough.
Yeah.
And that is obviously how, civilization has evolved. And it's that I want to add one more thing, because you mentioned the, masculine role in business too. When I was young, I was quite a feminist, yeah, and I've completely gone away from this, yeah,
Okay.
because for me, this is not even about equality anymore, because we are so unique in this different imprint, yeah, of those
Hmm.
two energies, as masculine and feminine, and actually as men and women in this world.
Yep.
What I'm a diversityist now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
in that sense. So because I think, and I know from, being a certain age, when feminism, just came into its full swing
Agreed.
in the sort of 70s, 80s, in my country, for example, and everybody was burning bras and sort of going up on revolts, and obviously we're still having this today, with the gender pay gap discussion. Yeah,
Yes.
if we could utilize the uniqueness of each gender and the aspects that make them unique and highlight them and actually celebrate them more. Yeah? And again,
Yes.
going back to respect, yeah,
Yeah.
we
Respect the
would be much
uniqueness.
better off as, as a people. But for that to happen, we first, again, we're going back. This is always an inside journey. We need to understand.
Always inside. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
we need to understand ourselves better and be more in
Yes.
balance in order to actually project that kind of understanding, or then the
Yeah.
new addition of of a really different perception. It's really about changing a belief system that hasn't been working for 3,000 years,
Yes.
plus.
Agreed.
If
Yeah.
you go historically, yeah, not really. Mm.
Yeah.
And we
You
have
know.
all the opportunities now with technology, with all, the great science that is coming up, neuroscience, which I'm a great fan of, just
Yes.
looking into your brain and understanding why you think the way you think and what it does to the mind, what it sets in motion, in a physical and,
And
muscular form
the
even.
chemicals that get
Yeah.
produced when that
That
situation
this
happens.
dictates your behavior and
Yeah.
how you actually show up in the world. I mean, we have all of these opportunities now to examine this in such detail that even 50, 100 years ago was absolutely impossible. Yeah?
Agreed. Yeah.
So
Very much so.
I'm always very excited about the future. uh,
Yes. I
so
would agree.
yeah,
There's so much. It's this world of possibility.
yeah. And if we
Isn't
buy
it? Which
into
is
that, obviously, if you focus on listening to yourself and others, and
yeah.
make space, and also consciously set the respect frame, a bit wider,
Yeah.
I think everybody benefits, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
we obviously, there's a generational gap too. There are very, very hardcore programs running, underneath the surface that we all are still victim to. But
Yeah,
I think that's why, becoming aware of what makes you tick and who you actually um, are probably the biggest tasks you can undertake in this lifetime.
yeah,
Never mind of being a human in a society and then
yes,
being whatever, a father or being a brother or being a husband or as the masculine in this
sure.
society. So I really feel for the guys because there is a lot of pressure that has been pent up for so long that we see now spilling over into all of these mental health issues for men,
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
sticking within that rim.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope, this inspired in some form or shape anyone out there. It was definitely an inspirational experience for me, as it always is with Colin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just picking up on that last bit, that the in order to understand myself better, one is to listen to myself, but the other is to be heard and listened to by others. So the quality of my thinking can be improved by the quality of the listening, the person who's listening to me. So if I know, it enables me to speak it out, and then in speaking it out and knowing that it's being heard without interruption, without judgment, and those sorts of things, enables me to really hear it now. And in hearing it, I can actually take it on board. So I think it's a real asset if you have someone that you can go to who will listen. That's part of one of the aspects of the work I do, is simply to listen, to enable people to think better. And we come up with our own answers when we're being heard, right? So you don't need to be fixed. Part of some of the training I do is I say to them, don't offer solutions. Don't try and fix it. Your natural inclination as a male is to fix. But sit on your hands, metaphorically, shut your mouth and listen. And one person who went away, he said, because we were meeting every 2 to 3 weeks, he wrote to me about 3 days later. He said, I can't tell you how different things have been, particularly with my partner. She came in with a problem. I was ready to give the answer, and I thought, no, hang on. So I kept asking questions. I kept listening. And eventually she said, you know what? Actually, I've got the answer. Thanks ever so much for listening. And they were gone. And it was like, I didn't do anything. I said, don't underestimate what you did. By paying full attention, giving her the space, creating that safe environment, enabled her to come up with the answers. That she knows better what the answer will be. We can probably guess, but often we think this way and they go that way and they walk away really happy. Yeah, beautiful.
Well,
So
the answers all lie within us, isn't it?
yeah,
On that note, Colin, thank you so much for your time.
thank
It's
you.
an absolute pleasure. And yeah, I'm glad we got to test run the card deck a little bit too. And you just see,
Yes,
it starts with one little thing,
yeah,
and
agreed.
whatever trails off. So, as I say in most of my Instagram posts, let hope float,
Let hope
and
float.
I hope we
Lovely.
can soon, tune in. And as I said, Colin, always welcome, for a second round.
Yep,
Thank you
indeed.
very much, as it for me and also the listeners. I really appreciate you making the conscious space and listening, and also
Thank you.
giving obviously your energy of the divine masculine, to our audience, which is so needed. Thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.